with Chill. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Daily Sovereignty Report for today, Tuesday, June 9th, 2026. This is your daily briefing on the stories that matter most to all 575 federally recognized tribes in the United States and even all of the First Nations tribes in Canada. If you want to know how Indigenous communities are protecting their land, their people, their future, you're in the right place. And remember, you won't hear these stories on the mainstream TV. So those big TV channels almost completely ignore Indian country unless we're like criminals, right? And we're on the front page or the front story of each of these TV shows. But we are here to give you the real scoop. Now, later, we'll have our first guest on the Daily Sovereignty Report. But first up, compelled repatriation proves once again that sticking together is winning back inherent rights. Universities in California like UCLA and UC Berkeley are finally being forced by law to return thousands of sacred cultural items and human remains back to the tribal nations they came from. Tribes are literally reclaiming their own history. But reclaiming history is only half the battle. Right now in North Dakota, tribal nations are calling for the stronger implementation of the Feather Alert system. It is a special system made specifically for missing Indigenous adults and children. Tribal leaders are pushing state and federal governments to back off and pass control over to the new Indian Country Violent Crime Task Force. Why does this matter? It matters because mainstream media rarely covers the crisis of missing Indigenous people. By rewriting criminal oversight laws, tribes are protecting their own citizens on their own terms. Next, let's talk about water sovereignty. The Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals just dismissed a big challenge against the White Earth Nation. In Minnesota, a non Indigenous farmer tried to sue in federal court because he did not want to obtain a tribal permit to pump millions of gallons of water from a river. The court sent him packing, confirming he has to exhaust the tribal court process first. Now, why does this matter? Out of 575 nations in the United States, only 39 actually have approved water rights settlements. This court win is a huge shield for reconciliation, proving tribes have the inherent right to defend their own aquifers and natural resources from outside companies trying to drain them without permission. All right, our next segment is the battle for crown treaties in Canada. Yeah, we've got some First Nations news. Turning to Canada today in Ottawa, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepenek attended the historic swearing in ceremony for the new Governor General Louise Arbour. Chief Nepenek wasted no time, immediately reminding the Crown's representative that Canadian treaties are not just ancient papers, they are sacred, living agreements requiring absolute nation to nation respect. Out of girl, out of lady, that's what I'm talking about. You let them know what's going on. Now, why does this matter? The Canadian government just announced a massive $4.3 billion investment for Indigenous communities. Man, they're always spending money where the tribes are up there. I love that. But mainstream television up there in Canada calls it a generous handout. But First Nation leaders are standing firm, reminding the public that this cash is literally a legal obligation for the rights and treaties promised to Indigenous peoples centuries ago. All right, let's turn to sports, one of my favorite topics. We're going to turn to sports and then environmental action. Let's hit the soccer field for some contemporary Indigenous sports story. We're going to head to the Puyallup tribe from my home state, Washington State. Just the Puyallup tribe just partnered with the Seattle Sounders FC to open a brand new lighted sports space named Wildabudali, which means a place to make yourself strong. This amazing facility includes special pitch panels built for blind athletes, serving as a regular regional training hub for the U.S. men's blind soccer team preparing for the upcoming 2026 World Cup. Congratulations to the Puyallup tribe and the Seattle Sounders. What an awesome partnership. All right, from time to time, we're very thankful and grateful to some great subject matter experts that are in Indian country that are working really hard to help tribes, whether we're talking about food sovereignty or we're talking about tribal sovereignty. In this case, we're talking about energy sovereignty. And joining me on, going to put him on stage here right now, is the Vice President of Engineering of Indian Energy, not the federal government Indian Energy, but the organization Indian Energy. How you doing, Alan?
I'm good. Good morning. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, Alan Cadreau. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, Alan James Cadrew, one of 5 owners of Indian Energy, who are tribal members for Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. We're Chippewa tribal members, and excited to be here and talk through kind of what we got going on and what we're seeing in Indian country.
Well, you're my very first interview on my show, so I appreciate you taking the time. We invited like 4 other people, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Let me take a look first. We'll see how it goes." Yeah. So thank you so much again. And I got to meet you officially at the California Tribal Leaders Energy Summit that we hosted with PG&E, SDG&E at the beautiful Viejas Resort in May. And what was your thoughts on the overall summit, the 2.5 days that we were all gathered?
Yeah, I think it was very effective. When you initially hear that, entities like the local utilities want to get together and showcase their partnerships with tribes, you tend to get some eye rolling going on in the background. But I actually felt I was very pleasantly surprised and happy with the dialogue. And it was very powerful doing it at Viejas and having a demonstration of the topics at hand right there in the backyard. And we were able to walk out and kind of see it for real. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the summit was, and really it's been a key to our recent success as an organization and for Indian country in the energy independence space, is seeing these entities put their money where their mouth is and really step up to the plate and do something that's really going to make a difference in Indian country and for Indian people. So I noticed that.
Well, good. I appreciate that the comments on it, and it was our 5th one, so we're looking at hopefully securing next year's deadline or date soon. And you're right, it is. I know that when we first did this 5 years ago at Morongo, I think a lot of folks were kind of the same way. Like, is this going to be a 2.5 day commercial for the utilities, or what are we doing here? And I think, at the end of the day, we're really just wanting to help bring the dreams of the tribes into fruition, and to actually every year where we go to any of these the tribes that we ask to be hosting tribes, do they have something around them that we can go look at? And so we thankful that the Indian Energy Group was not only from the very beginning of the planning of this last summit, but saying, yes, we want to, help Viejas with their microgrid. And so tell me a little bit at the very beginning of the microgrid planning of the Viejas, what was some of the dreams that they had, prior to this actually coming into fruition?
Yeah. And I, without speaking for the tribe, because I'm not part of the band, but I know that in our early stage efforts, there was a very large focus around levelized cost of energy, and the tribe, as communicated to us, had a vision for doing something else with that money, right? Avoided cost, being able to levelize and secure a certain bucket of cost for a long-term period of time in order to reinvest those resources and be able to invest them into the dollars saved on the commercial side, being able to invest them on the government side of the tribe. And so that was a big driver, for Indian Energy in our conversations with Viejas and also other tribes, is really level setting on the goals and looking at it, short term, mid-term, and long term. And I think long term, every tribe's goal is to be more sovereign and be as sovereign as you can. And so leveraging the tools that we have to do so is, I think, in the back of everybody's mind.
Yeah, and I think, as a tribal liaison of the one of the major utilities in California, I get to be able to hear tribal electeds, of course, during high fire risk season, which is now almost 12 months of the year now. being able to hear them say, why are you guys taking us down? Why are you de-energizing us? And we always talk about public safety power shutoff being the last resort, that we don't want to do that, but we have to protect the tribal communities. But the number one thing I hear back is like, well, let us take that burden. If let us decide if we want to be taken down or not. And I don't know, I can't speak for Edison, but I could say that I know it would be it's a big responsibility. And if tribes want energy sovereignty, we're all here for it. And if they want to take that responsibility, in case something does catch on fire, or God forbid, that's on them. But who are we to stand in their way of the tribe's vision to have, when everybody else is down, but their tribe is still running full 100%. That's what a microgrid does, right? So what were some of the key steps, and not only with Viejas, but any other tribes that you've worked with, when considering a microgrid? What were some of the key steps early on that they needed to do?
One second. So I think that for sure, taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. A lot of infrastructure, even across the utilities, is antiquated.
Yep.
And as you build out any system, there comes a point where you kind of got to go backwards a little bit, clean up some of the old antiquated infrastructure, and then build something new and fresh that you can successfully expand upon in the future. And so one of the really unique aspects of this project, and I think it was a true key to success, because we just declared commercial operation on June 1st for the project.
Awesome.
We're very excited to be in operations and actually utilizing the systems. But I think one of the keys to this was the tribe also had a vision for rebuilding their backup generator system. So they had a very disparate system that had 8 to 10 different generators around the property, and they wanted to do a consolidation effort of that infrastructure and rebuild it in such a way that it would be more redundant and more robust of a backup system, because there were spots in the hotels and casinos that didn't have backup power, and so they really wanted to re-envision how the system could be backed up. And so we really have two totally different projects or visions for a project that came together. So there's the renewable microgrid, which is 15 megawatts of solar PV, 70 megawatt hours of non-lithium long duration energy storage, and a set of distribution infrastructure that was being built to facilitate the renewable microgrid. And through that process and the planning and design process, the tribe said, hey, we're also doing this with our backup generator system. So why don't you, Indian Energy, help us look at this from a holistic approach instead of a piecemeal onesie twosie process where you get locked into a system design that is not expandable, in the future. And
right.
a lot of traps that I think we fall into is the pressure of money. Right. And when, funds are released, there's always hooks. And a lot of times the hook with the money is time. You got to spend it now. You got to spend it now or it's going to go away.
Right.
And get pushed down a road that may not be what's best for the tribe.
Yep.
So being able to have patience and take our time and listen to experts and interview people. And it's okay to tell people, no, it's not going to work out because you're just not the right fit for us, for the tribe. So we were very fortunate with Viejas to have built a very strong relationship, one where both parties and our other stakeholders on the financing side, design, construction, kind of through the whole process, have been very patient and willing to work with us, and give time on the clock to make sure that it's right.
Yeah, and I think that again, I think when I always call them the Biden bucks came out back in the 2021, 2022, they were talking about spilling a bunch of money into energy infrastructure all across the country, not just in Indian country, but then we had all that unprecedented dollars that came in, and my phone was actually relatively silent during that period. And I was like, what is going on? Why aren't tribes calling to say, or, hey, let's partner up and we got this money now, that's not a burden or a barrier, but really what we found out, in listening to the Department of Energy's Indian office back in, I think it was a 2024 NCEI tell us that only 24% of those dollars were actually allocated. And the number one reason was that tribes said that they didn't have the bandwidth or the people power to be able to, take the funds and, and actually make those funds work. But I think the other part of it too is that, and I'm talking with a lot of tribal electeds during that time, is that they just didn't know what they wanted. They didn't know what it meant. They weren't really briefed on understanding, infrastructure like microgrids can do for the tribe, and then what does that really lock them into? It was just a lot of confusion. And
Yeah.
I think that, doing the summits every year that we're doing and trying to, put together these podcasts is a way to try to, educate folks throughout the year so that it doesn't sneak up on them. But I think that's, understanding what you want, I think is probably one of just a basic question that a lot of tribes really had a hard time trying to figure out. But it's good to know that that money was there. But let's fast forward a little bit to 2026. What funding or technical resources are available today that you might be able to lead us down that path?
Yeah, for sure. So, and I'll just use the Viejas Enterprise microgrid as an example, because I think there's a lot of, I mean, we've certainly learned a ton of lessons. There's a lot of things we wouldn't do again, and there's a lot of things that we would absolutely do again the same way, and then also different. So we have a total mix. One of the funding sources that we're very proud of in this project was the Department of Energy's Tribal Energy Finance Program. And there's different names now with this administration, so forgive me if I'm misspeaking what they're actually called. But it was their loan programs office at the time. They have a tribal energy finance program, which used to be $2 billion of set aside funds for tribes and energy infrastructure, and it was expanded to 20 billion of available money. This program's been around for 15 years, and it has never been deployed. Not a single dollar has come out of that set aside to help finance projects on Indian country, although it's this massive resource. And so Indian Energy, through this project with our lending partners, US Bank, applied for the program and got through it, and were actually allocated the first tranche of money out of that as a loan guarantee. So we borrowed private money through US Bank, and it was backstopped by the Tribal Energy Finance Program, the loan program office. And they provide a 90% guarantee on the debt portion of the debt facility of the project. So to have been the only one to get through it, we've gone back to DC, we've interviewed with the groups, and they're asking for feedback, and they're trying to rewrite some legislation to make the money a little easier to access, because there's a ton of tribes out there. Just going through the process and talking to different tribes, and that they're aware of this program, but it's like you die on the vine trying to get through it, and the project just whittles away. And then you can't do it fast enough, and administrations change. Now your project needs to change, and everybody's got their own preference on how the money should be spent, and it's got nothing to do with what the tribes actually need. So anyway, not to go down that road, but that's a program that is available that we were successful in getting through, and kind of a miracle. But again, back to partnership. So this project also leverages private sector money. We had bridge loans through the process. We had a bridge loan, a construction loan with BlackRock. So BlackRock participated in this project in a big way. Their impact finance group, US Bank, Starbucks, all kind of helped to build the capital stack that made this project work. And so I think and the California Energy Commission obviously was probably the backbone of the project, because they were really the ones who put up, and they came in, they put their money in on the project. It was a $43 million grant to help fund the battery storage technology.
Huh.
And they really showed everybody in the circle, the stakeholders at the table, what commitment looked like, and specifically to tribes. So in a long history of putting money out there, and then you end up with just kind of an abandoned asset that works for a little bit, but then there's nobody there to carry the torch.
Right.
And so the California Energy Commission signed an order where, you know, they are truly committed to the success of these projects in Indian country. And so their commitment, longstanding, I think really helped give the other financial stakeholders the confidence that the project was going to be successful, and especially the DOE, you know, in helping push through on their portion with the loan guarantee, and then giving the lenders the confidence, and the tax equity investors the confidence. So these projects are very complex from a financing, can be very complex from a financing structure, but I think a program that is definitely underutilized and can be very beneficial is that loan program, the $20 billion from the Tribal Energy Finance Program, that can help offset costs, and help make the cost of money competitive for this type of infrastructure.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the story that you just said was loaded with several leads. It sounded like there was loan from a bank, there was private funding through Starbucks. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Or are you guys, is there NDAs, or
No,
how did it go with Starbucks? How did that happen?
yeah. So Starbucks is in partnership with U.S. Bank. I think they have a co-investment fund.
Okay.
And so they're in the market of buying tax credits and also buying renewable energy credits. So we have a contract with Starbucks for the renewable energy credits, as well as a portion of the tax credits, the ITCs through the IRA, to purchase the tax credits. So that commitment to purchase the tax credits from the project can be leveraged for financing on the front end, for construction financing. So one of the biggest challenges that we see is, one, where to start, and then who's going to pay for this thing. And so there's different, you know, so it goes back to the kind of the planning stages and understanding what the tribe wants, because there's different ways to structure these deals. You can have it where the tribe has full ownership and equity stake and risk associated with that, but they're putting, you know, but that's a cash type investment, right? You got to come up with equity. And there's certain buckets of money that you can use that counts as equity, and you can leverage assets, you know, associated with your equity portion. But so you got to get creative, and you got to know. But a big part of our success in going through the loan program with the DOE was the DOE was educating themselves all the while, right, as we're going through this process. And so everybody was. And so getting people to, you know, acknowledge that, and then just say, we don't exactly know how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there together, is a helpful starting place, rather than everybody going in, you know, with their chests out saying, we know exactly how to do this, we're going to get it done. And then, you know, that causes challenges and delays. But yeah, so Starbucks was the off taker for tax credits and renewable energy credits, which helped us leverage that offtake for additional financing means.
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about that bandwidth question that we had heard, you know, tribes saying that was one of the main reasons. But before I go there, I again just applaud the CEC, the California Energy Commission, and Sierra Graves, the tribal liaison, and all of the commissioners and staff for assisting the tribe, and also all that money that was able to be distributed through their program that they have. And so again, you know, I think they're one of just a few state entity organizations in the country that you can say we're happy to partner with state entities. You know, as tribes, we get so caught up, oh, you're state, we don't like you, but you know, kudos to the CEC
for sure.
And then so getting back to the bandwidth issue for either Viejas or any other tribes that you've worked with recently, what kind of workforce or what kind of bandwidth would a tribe need? Because it wasn't just council; they had somebody on that worked for council one or two people. I don't need names, but just curious as to what roles people played, or what their positions were. I mean, as tribe liaison, I talked to facility directors about energy. I talked to economic development directors about a tribe's energy plan, but they don't really have an energy champion. The tribes aren't really there yet. For most of them, are not. What do you recommend in terms of having if a tribe's like, yeah, we could go ask for the money, we can go get it, but who's going to be the hands and the feet to actually get the work done?
Yeah, for sure. So at the end of the day, it needs to be us as tribal members and members of a tribal community. We need to do it for ourselves. And
Right.
that's going to take time to go through the educational process and learn and become remotivated to want to participate in the community in that way, because it's an obligation, and it's a responsibility that we have, and we should be proud of.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, and on the way, it's important to have that in my opinion, it's important to have that context, so that in the journey of implementing projects like this and bringing people to the tribe who can help be subject matter experts, that knowledge doesn't just come in and then go away when that person moves on to the next project, but that there's an actual lasting educational process and training and handover, so that the tribe can do it for themselves the next time.
Right.
The biggest, I think, you got to have a champion for the project, right? Because tribal council members all have, varying backgrounds and areas of expertise, but you need to have somebody who can speak the language, the technical language for these types of projects, and be able to, sniff out when something's not right, and keep things on the tracks. So I would say, Indian Energy is a great resource, but I like to say that in the sense that we are doing it for ourselves, right? Like we're not back in Michigan, with our tribe, but we are Sault Ste. Marie tribal members who have electrical engineering degrees, who now own and operate power plants, and we have the skill sets in Indian country, and we should continue to build on this as an example. As projects are done, the tribes should be and can, insert somebody of their own family, into that work stream and that knowledge stream. So I think that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think the bigger picture is what matters, because it's where we're going to be, but we do need to get things done today. And so
yeah,
it's building that trust and finding those people who you can trust, to not, lead you down the wrong path.
Right. And it is groups like Indian Energy that can help. So I'm very thankful to hear you say that you guys are definitely a resource.
For sure.
Until the tribe does get set up. And I've always believed that one day, I mean, I'm going to retire in less than 10 years. I'm going to be done. Probably, I don't know, sitting on some beach or something, when I retire, and then probably set up another nonprofit or something to get me going till the end of my days. But, oh shoot. Yeah. Okay. So at the end of the day, though, I just know that tribes that are set up internally, whether they have their own utility or they have their team of energy folks or utility folks, is I think that's probably where I could see tribes going down in the road, is to say, we've got a utility department now that takes care of the energy, that takes care of broadband, water, all of the infrastructure. And that's all they do all day. They go out, get the money, they come back to the tribal council. I mean, it's just a whole machine that's set up. But you have to put money into that. You have to have expertise, put it into your resolution and your bylaws, all that stuff that goes into being sovereign. It just doesn't happen overnight, as you said, and it does take a group of people to help. And so whether that's your folks or it's internal or both, I think that being able to have that as a possibility is always going to be there. So final comments for you. I know I went over our time together, so I want to make sure that you're cognizant of your time. So do you have any final comments for anybody that's watching?
I think I got through most of what I was, what I had on my mind, and kind of just refining maybe some of the comments that I made during the panel that I spoke on during the summit. But I think the most important thing is to ask a lot of questions, don't believe the first thing you hear,
Right.
because there's just a lot more information out there, and
Yep.
it's a blessing and a curse to want to know it all, because it can be paralyzing. But it is really important to just make sure that the big picture helps inform the next step tomorrow and
Right.
today, because we got to make sure we're headed in that direction, and everything we do today is a means to an end. So making sure that we know what the end goal is. And I think for us, it's heading back towards original, true sovereignty, and
Mhm.
being able to leverage the tools and the knowledge today to help keep going in that direction is just really, really valuable. And trying to just maintain that mindset through this process, because it's not going to go perfect. These projects are highly complex, and systems are very complex, and there's decades and decades of knowledge base out there from everybody, the manufacturing of the equipment to the utilities who've been serving this area for so long,
Yep.
and they're leveraging their expertise and their support, like what you're mentioning, and the programs that the utilities have in place to, on the technical side, and have engineers who are willing to think outside the box, because you know if one tribe, one tribe, and it's
Right.
going, everybody's different goals, different needs and resources and available skill sets. And so if people trying to do business in Indian country, it's, you got to be patient and
Mhm.
earn the trust back.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Alan, not only for your time today on the Daily Sovereign Report, but also for Indian Energy Group for helping tribes, you know, fulfill their dreams and leaving a legacy for so many of their tribal members. I always talk about the seventh generation, and after us, and that's what you guys are doing. It's making a lot of positive impact in Indian country and beyond. And so I just again want to thank you for your time today. All right. Thanks again to our special guest. Very first time having a guest on the show, Mr. Alan Kudrow. Thank you so much, Indian Energy. That wraps up today's Daily Sovereignty Report. Thank you for listening. Stay informed and stay sovereign.